Hi everyone, Allison here from the Protocase team. Today I'm going to go over how to transfer your enclosure design to a new enclosure. This is a really helpful feature for when you're prototyping and trying to figure out the right design for your electronics, or if you want to present different enclosure options to your manager or design team. So to start, you'll need to open the Protocase Designer assembly file of the enclosure that you want to transfer. I have my L-shaped enclosure open here that I want to start with. As you can see, I've got several faces on my enclosure that have custom cutouts, as well as two faces with digitally printed graphics. I have a logo on the front face and some labeling on the rear face. Let me show you how to transfer a design to a new enclosure style. So while you're in 3D view, you'll go to File in the top menu and choose Transfer to New Enclosure. A new dialog called Transfer Design to New Assembly will open. So here you'll need to select the new enclosure that you want to transfer your existing enclosure to. I'm going to choose a 5-sided enclosure. So here's where you can change any of the parameters of your enclosure, including metal type, powder coat color, screw type, width, height, depth, and more. I'm going to keep all of my parameters the same, except I do need to change my dimensions. I'm going to change the width to 20 inches because my original enclosure's dimensions were 20 inches wide by 20 inches deep by 10 inches high. So one thing to note, Protocase Designer will transfer parameters for enclosures of the same category, such as if you transfer between two types of extruded enclosure, nothing needs to be changed. However, if you're transferring from something like a U-shape to a rack mount enclosure, you may need to change some of those parameters manually, so it's a good idea to just go through every parameter and make sure you're okay with it before you proceed. So once you're satisfied with what you've selected, you need to click OK. So here you'll see a new dialog open called Transfer to New Enclosure. This is where you need to choose which face from the current design should be transferred to your new designer assembly. The software is going to automatically try to detect which side should be transferred to which face. However, you can manually change any face that you wish. I recommend going through each one just to make sure it's going to transfer to the correct spot. So in mine, you'll notice that the top of my original enclosure wasn't being transferred to the right face. The top shouldn't go to the base. I need to manually select Cover from the drop-down. One thing to note, certain templates use different names for a face. For instance, a rack mount has a front panel, whereas a consulate simply just has a front. If you're unsure of a face name for your assembly, you can click on Diagram to see a labeled diagram of the faces for that enclosure type. Here's another tip. Instead of transferring this face, you can also opt to drop this face. This might be necessary if the enclosure to which you are transferring has fewer faces than the original enclosure that you started with. For instance, if you transferred from a consulate to a U-shape enclosure, you would likely need to drop at least one face, such as a sloped front. In another scenario, you may want to drop a face that has features you don't want to carry over to the new enclosure style. So once you've completed indicating which faces should be transferred to your new enclosure, you can click Continue. Or if you want to go back to your original design, you can click Cancel to abandon the new enclosure template altogether. Okay, now I can see my new design, which has been transferred to a 5-sided enclosure. Sometimes the design looks fine at a first glance. However, with mine, you can see that several cutouts and graphics need to be adjusted. All I need to do now is go into the face editor so I can edit each of these faces and adjust things as necessary. So one final caution, sometimes template features such as handles on a rack mount may not transfer to the new enclosure. If that's the case, you may need to manually re-add them to your design. So this concludes our tutorial on transferring an enclosure design. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out by emailing info@protocasedesigner.com. You can also check out our forum and wiki. Thanks for watching and happy designing!